Good afternoon. I'm Dan DeRosa with 19 News Now, coming to you from our digital desk. We're going to be taking you to the sentencing of two young men who were 19 at the time of the commission of the crime. They're accused in a drive-by, not even accused, they've been found guilty of a drive-by shooting that took the life of 13-year-old Marco Toller. They were in a car on December 11th of 2021 in Euclid, along with another juvenile, when they drove around a corner and they saw the 13-year-old, this young man, Marco Toller, when they shot and killed him. They are being sentenced today for 1 count of murder, 2 counts of felony assault, 1 count of discharge of firearm into a home, 1 count of discharge of firearm near a prohibited premise, and 1 count of tampering with evidence. I believe they're going to be doing these one at a time. And if I heard the bailiff earlier, I believe this is for Dwayne Jackson. So let's listen in.
With 1 and 3-year firearm specification. Count 5, felonious assault with 1 and 3-year firearm specification. Count 6, improperly discharging a firearm at or into a habitation or school with a 1 and 3-year firearm specification. Discharge of firearm on or near prohibited premises with a 1 and 3-year firearm specification in count 7, and count 10, tampering with evidence. The remaining counts and the 5-year drive-by specifications were hung. The jurors could not reach a unanimous verdict. The parties agreed to go forward with the verdicts that had been unanimously decided. A court ordered a pre-sentence investigative report, which I have received and reviewed. Mr. Schlackett, have you had a chance to look at this as well?
I have, thank you. No additions.
Mr. Schnatter?
We have, Your Honor.
Any additions, deletions, or corrections?
None on behalf of the state. Not on behalf of Mr. Jackson. Thank you, Judge.
Okay. There was one correction the court noted. And you may not have seen the victim impact statements associated with the PSI. It was incorrectly stated in actually the co-defendant's PSI. The name of the victim was incorrect, so that should be corrected it was Jalen Lamar on the PSI, but the victim in this matter is Marco Toller. I didn't notice that same mistake in Mr. Jackson's PSI. Would you like to address court mitigation, Mr. Schlacken?
Judge, may it please the court. You have somewhat of an advantage, Your Honor, because rather than just looking at a plea, colloquy, and an antiseptic pre-sentence investigation report, I mean, they're thorough, but it's just words. You were able to sit through the entire trial. You heard all of the evidence, and you know exactly what the jury found and what the defenses were and what the allegations were. With respect to the counts, Your Honor, we believe that the felonious assaults merge with each other, of course, because they're different varieties. One's with a deadly weapon, one's with attempt to cause serious physical harm, so those obviously merge. We also respectfully submit that those merge with murder B because the murder B was the underlying offense of felonious assault. So those have to merge. The murder B, of course, is life with parole eligibility after 15 years. If you wanted to be charitable to this young man, you couldn't do it if you wanted to because the law requires that it's 15 plus the 3 for the firearm. And unfortunately, we concede, Your Honor, that there has to be under 29-29-14, I believe it's G1B, I think, I forget, but it's 29-29-14, and the Supreme Court's interpretation of that statute that there has to be another 3-year firearm spec. So that means he's got to do 15 plus 6, so that's 21. Then there's, of course, the improper discharge into the habitation and over a roadway. Your Honor, you heard the evidence. There was one segregated, discrete animus in this case, according to what the jury found, which is that there was a shooting into the house and this young man was in front of the house and got shot. There was not separate animuses. There was only one mens rea. So I'd submit to you that the improper discharges merge with each other and merge into the murder B as well. And then there's a tampering, Your Honor, which of course is a low tier F3. Young Dwayne was had just turned 18, just barely had turned 18. When this crime occurred, he was a senior, of course, at at Benedictine, Your Honor. He was living what seemingly was a wonderful life. I mean, he was a scholarship capable football player. He had never been in trouble before, and something got turned around. I mean, his mother, who sat through the trial, and of course she's here with all of her family, she was absolutely devastated when she saw some of those photos and some of the testimony. She couldn't believe it. I mean, she just said, that's not the Dwayne I raised or knew. I don't know what happened to this young man, Judge. I really don't know what happened. But here he is. He was 18 with no prior record. So, Your Honor, I'm going to ask you most respectfully, I'm not going to use the word minimal, because this is obviously not minimal. He's looking at life at an 18 years of age. I'd ask you, Judge, to impose the 18 plus the 6, or the 15, I'm sorry, plus the 6, which would be 21. Let him rehabilitate himself through the prison system, Your Honor, and hopefully he's going to have some life left after he reaches the period where he could potentially receive a parole. Your Honor, as you know, in your experience, if he were coming in front of the board today, what would the board do to him? They would flop him like they flop everybody for at least 5. That's just what they're doing. Now, frankly, I have no idea what they're going to be doing 20 years from now. I don't think even this honorable court knows. But I can only go by what we have now. Empirically, all the data shows they just don't let anybody out. So I'd ask you to impose the 21, Your Honor, obviously with a life parole eligibility after 21. If you would give me some discretion, Your Honor, we'd like to call Tamika Ewan. She is the godmother of Dwayne. His mother is here, but she is just too emotionally distraught. She won't be able to get her words out. One last thing, Judge, and thanks for your patience with me. The family of the young man certainly is going to want Dwayne Jackson to get up and say, I'm sorry, I apologize for your loss. He has been instructed under advice of counsel, Your Honor, not to make any statement in his own behalf today. He is not going to allocute because he is going to pursue his appellate rights. And I've instructed him that anything he could say could be used against him in his appeal. So, Judge, I hope, I mean, obviously you understand the legal nuance of what we're advising him. I hope most respectfully that you won't hold that against this young man. It's my advice, it's not his. Thank you, Your Honor. Could I, if, with your permission?
Yes.
I'd ask Tamika to come forward. Approach the bench, the podium there, state your name for the record, and spell your name for the court reporter, please.
My name is Tamika Ewing, Tomeka Ewing. I am Dwayne Jackson's godmother, and I'm a social worker with the state of Ohio. I'm going to speak on behalf for my best friend, Tracy, and to the family who took a loss, because everybody has lost something here today. And it's very unfortunate that we're even here. So, I don't know what happened. He a good kid. He's always been a good kid. I don't know what happened with it, but what I do know is that nowadays our children are more loyal to the streets than they are to their families. And I know that nowadays modern technology can be a curse and a blessing for our children. I don't know what happened or transpired that day. I wasn't there. But my heart goes out to both families, because in spite of, everybody is taking a loss. And I just ask that you be lenient on everybody. Everybody deserves a second chance. That's it.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Anything else, Mr. Schlacken?
No, Judge, thank you, Your Honor.
Mr. Jackson, anything you'd like to tell the court?
No, Your Honor.
Mr. Schnatter?
Thank you, Your Honor. Just as a preliminary matter, I received a couple receipts from this deal this morning, and I forwarded them to Mr. Schlackett. One is for $2,025 from Strouder's Funeral Home, and another is for $1,100 for Phoenix Event Center, which was for Marco's repass. I can forward those receipts to your bailiff if the court likes. But we would ask for the court's sentence to include restitution. Your Honor, there are a few members of Marco's families that would like to address the court with the court's permission. I know his grandfather, Lamar Hudson, wanted to speak on his behalf.
Come on up here, sir. And could you please state your name and spell your name out for court reporter?
Name is Lamar Hudson, Lamar Hudson.
Yes, sir.
I am Craig, Marco Craig Lamar Toller's grandfather. Tomorrow is my birthday, and I would ask this. My faith says forgive. At this moment, I can't speak on that. I also believe that give me a second if you don't mind. My grandson got eternity. I heard the words of the respectable, lawyer, and I can appreciate the feelings of the other family. Sorry. But in my heart, I just would believe and hope that for what you give, you should get. I wish I had wrote it down, but thank you, Your Honor.
Your Honor, Marco's grandmother, Andrea Ayers.
Your Honor, my name is Andrea Ayers, Andreaayers. Your Honor, my grandson, Marco Craig Lamar Toller, was a bright young man with big dreams. You know, he dreamed of being an entrepreneur one day, and as you see, he had a support team. And when my grandson was living, I had no doubt that he would make it to be anything he wanted. But now that he's gone, I find myself with a lot of questions and doubt. All these dreams and aspirations that my grandson and I used to talk about are all gone for me. I won't get our virtual hugs anymore, as we call them. Marco was actually one of my grandkids that called to check on me quite often. And I'm gonna miss those things, you know, about him. I don't know, my grandson had a lot of potential though, Your Honor, and I have no doubt in my mind that he would have been a very successful young man had his life not been taken that day. Thank you.
Your Honor, Ms. Jill Pruitt. And Marco Lamont.
You want me to come with him?
How you doing?
Good afternoon, Judge. My name is Jilleen Pruitt, Jillene Pruitt. And today is a very tough day for everyone in here. You know, even you as a judge, to be in a position to make a judgment that alters the emotions of a mom, the emotions of another mom, and how the rest of her son's life will continue. Marco was only 13, doing what he was supposed to be doing, going to visit a close friend, you know, riding his bike. And like his grandmother said, there are some things he cannot enjoy because he's no longer here, and that time was taken away from him. I am also a woman of faith and know that and agree that there's a lot of loss here today. It's not pleasing, you know, to even be sitting on the other side of another young male who also still have so much life ahead of him. And I do pray that however life happens for him, that is fair, he rehabilitates and understand, you know, that although he will get whatever time he gets today, he gets to get that time. We don't get time with Marco. That time is gone. It stopped for us. And, you know, at the choices of someone else, for whatever reason they chose to make them choices, you know, on that day, for us, we'll forever be mourning. You know, we'll forever not know what man he would have become. Just, it's over. That part is over. So, I mean, and he was 13, he meant a lot to so many people. He impacted so many lives. There are so many people that I've met since his life was taken away that they were like, wow, I did not know that was your godson. Like, I've been knowing him since he was 8. He'd come over and cut my grass or just call and see how I was doing. Even as a child, just very compassionate. And I'm going to read something that his best friend gave to his mom this morning, you know, just a way to show also further how much he meant to his peers, those that loved him. Marco was like my baby brother. I met Marco when he was in the 1st grade and I was in the 2nd grade. It was 3 of us, Marco, Deanna, and I. We were like 3 musketeers. That's what Deanna's mom called us. We were inseparable. We were family. Nothing else different. Although Marco was the 2nd oldest, he always acted like he was my older brother. I love that about him. Unfortunately, we lost Marco to gun violence, December 11th, 2021. This took me and Deanna by surprise, and we have never imagined losing someone we love so dearly, someone we never thought we would lose. Marco was a sweet, loving young man. That's how the man described him at the balloon release. I know that my baby brother was sweet. He told everything how it was. He was bold. He was truthful. He was trusting. My baby brother was my hero. He was someone I know I could always count on if I needed anything. If anybody really knew him, they knew that he didn't play about his family. He came up with something great he called Operation Feed the Family. We all knew Marco was a good kid and could do anything if he wanted. He just had to put his all into it. And Deanna and I were his everything. We were his hearts. We all looked out for each other and we had a bond that could never be broken. Now it's up to me to make sure that my sister is all right all the time and to keep that smile on her face. I promised Marco that I would never forget him and I would always be there for his mother and his sisters. Now his sister is having a baby and I can't wait to tell her. I can't wait to tell her all about her Uncle Marco. So he will never meet that niece because he's not here to. And you know just the case. And he's another 13, young kid. But for everyone who does not know him, he really, to be so young, had so much love from people in the neighborhood. And just like a quick story for me that I was thinking about today that always makes me laugh about him is, I was going to pick him up one day and he told me, he said, God, Mommy, if I'm not at home, I'll be up the street over my friend's house. And we'll be outside on the porch because that's where we always hang out, on the porch. So I'm imagining when I get to him to meet his friend, someone his age. And he told me also, like, yeah, we're going to talk about coming up with a plan for our lemonade stand. And when I get there, sure enough, Marco was not at home. He was down the street at this friend's house. So the person, he said, God, Mom, I want you to meet my friend. I'm like, okay, go in the house and get him. He's like, no, my friend right here. It was a 62-year-old man that lived up the street from them, who he went and helped sell hot tamales and cut his grass and learned all kind of great just entrepreneur skills from. And I did not imagine that I was going there to meet someone who could be his grandfather. But, that just goes to show I'm so grateful on one hand that God gave us those years and so many other people that opportunity to meet such a fashionable and, remarkable young man. But it's so many more remarkable memories that we no longer have. So I ask that you just, take all things today into consideration, and that God be with you in making your choice.
How you doing? My name is Anita Deal, Anita Deal. I am Marco Craig Lamar Toller's mother. Where do I start? Oh, Jesus. Oh, Your Honor, December 11, 2021, I just came home from work. I talked to my son that morning. He was coming home the next day. I get a phone call from his counselor. I'm on my way to you. Why? 13-year-old boy murdered on Zeman. Marco Craig Lamar Toller. I screamed. I yelled. Morticia, let's go. I gotta get to Zeman. I gotta find my child. Something ain't right. I called where he was supposed to be at. With my son. I don't know. I get to Zeman. And all the police officers in Euclid. My kids, they was at every event. I see yellow tape. I run. He's full of tears. My son, let me get to my son. He's 13. Let me see my baby. I fell down. I couldn't breathe. My daughter grabbed me. The officer grabbed me. I'm sorry. I stayed on the ground for hours. My baby couldn't move. I didn't want to go. All I can think about, my son want his mommy. Where's my mommy? He's screaming for his mommy for the little seconds he had. My son died in a matter of moments. You heard it, 13 years old. You listen. They tried to make my son out to be somebody different. He was 13, visiting his best friend. No, he didn't belong there. Who can keep best friends away from each other? They did everything together. You would think I raised her. You just thought I birthed her. She's been around the world with me. North Carolina, South Carolina, everywhere. Wow, Florida, why would her mother not let her go with me? Why wouldn't I let my son go over there? Who cares about a court order? They're kids. They're kids. They were playing in the house because of the rain and got trespassing. They were kids. If my son was here today, he would play so much music for you. My son been rapping since he was 9. He called himself Little Demon. Operation Feed the Family. He made that. He wanted to support his family. He wanted to make his mama proud. I don't care what my son did in this world. He wanted his mama to be proud of him. Proud of him. I have not slept a night peacefully because my son not running through my house. I've been told to go dig my son up. Why? Why would you form them words on your mouth to tell me to dig my son up? And you want me to have sympathy for your child to do bare minimum? And I'd never give my child. I'd never see my son. Anybody that know Marco, no. He run through the house and say, I love you. If Marco knew you, Your Honor, I love you. My son told everybody in this world he loved them. He didn't just show it, he expressed it. He ran up to you. Godmommy, I love you. Cousin, I love you. Now, can I have some money? But that was Marco. I worked for it. What you got me to do? The whole entire street was at my son's services. Never seen them in my life. But my son knew them. Shovel snow, rake leaves. They told me I must have been here today because your son hold a place in my heart. I fell in the funeral. Because all these people showed me this much love because they love my child. What am I supposed to do? My son told me, Mom, don't never bury me. Cremate me. Keep me with you forever. And that's what I did. I have not worn my son on my neck almost 2 years. Because I got to face reality. But today I wore my baby with me today. So he can come here with me, stand in front of you, as I beg you to do what's right. But my baby, I would never see him again. I would never hear him again. I have to listen to videos just to hear my son say, I love you. Just to hear my son say his brother's name. Your Honor, please, mere minimum, ain't it? You got your second chance. You get to live your life, whether it's in prison or not. Your family get to see you. Your family get to hug you, get to talk to you. Before we had the day in court, I reached out to everybody's parent, mother to mother. Y'all didn't do it. How can we do this without hurting two families? You know, I got to run around. Oh, I want to talk to her, not on the phone, but in person. I ain't talked to their parent yet, but one in person. But they can't even apologize. You didn't do it. You just birthed them. If it was mine, my kids would tell you, my mama turning them in. My mama gonna ride that ride with them, whether they do life or not. But I ain't gonna let them be out in the street. They took somebody's baby, somebody's life. He wasn't out here doing nothing wrong. He was doing what little kids do. Probably going to try to rap with his best friend. Thank you, Your Honor. I'm sorry. But thank you for listening to me.
Thank you.
Your Honor, I appreciate you giving Marco's family an opportunity to address the court. I do want to address something Mr. Schlackett brought up about merger. He mentioned how things were committed with a single animus, but that's only half the test. If there is a separate and identifiable harm, whether it's a single animus or not, the offenses don't merge. The discharge into a habitation, Your Honor, you were here for the testimony during the trial. There was a 3-year-old child sitting on a couch where there was a bullet hole right next to where that child's head was. There was also Ms. Adams, the homeowner, his mom, who was right with them and then was into the kitchen cooking, and that bullet went through the couch, through the wall, and ricocheted off the refrigerator into the trash can. So it's the state's position that the discharge into a habitation does not merge when there are separate victims, and the victims listed on the discharge in the habitation are not Marco, and he could not be listed as a victim because he was not in the habitation, are the mother and the child. So it's the state's position that those do not merge. Also, Your Honor, anything I say in terms of the harm that Mr. Jackson's conduct caused would diminish what you heard from the family. I mean, Marco was loved and taken away from them. But I do want to point one thing out to this court, and I know the court paid a great deal of attention during the trial. Just an hour after Marco's life was taken, Mr. Jackson, his co-defendant, Mr. Billups, and Mr. Stewart were posing, flashing the gun that was used to take Marco's life, flipping off the camera, showing absolutely no remorse for what occurred. If this was an accident, that's not the conduct of people who accidentally did something. This was a purposeful shooting and taking the life of Marco Toller. There was absolutely no sense of remorse or recognition for what they did that day. I think that lack of recognition speaks volume for Mr. Jackson's propensity to commit this crime again. I trust this court to impose a sentence with the charges at its disposal that will reflect the harm caused to the Toller family, Ms. Deal, also to the family whose home was shot in. You recall the testimony of the mom. They had to sell their home and they had to relocate to another home because they were no longer safe living in their home. That sense, that loss of home and safety, that is a separate harm. I trust the court to impose a sentence that will reflect the harm caused to the Tollers and to the family with the home. and that would reflect the absolute callousness and lack of recognition for the harm that they caused. Thank you, Your Honor.
Mr. Schleck, anything else?
No, thank you, Your Honor.
Any objection to the request for $3,125 with respect to restitution for funeral costs?
Assuming no insurance would cover that, Your Honor, I have no objection.
You don't have any information on insurance covering any of those costs, Mr. Schneider?
Ms. Deal just indicated that she paid that money out of her own funds, Your Honor.
All right, if there's nothing else at this point. The court has considered all this information, all the principles and purposes of felony sentencing, all the appropriate recidivism and seriousness factors. And first of all, I'd like to express my deepest condolences to Marco's family. You were here in support of him throughout this process and today as well. And that speaks volumes with respect to his character and his upbringing. And he certainly is at no fault whatsoever in what occurred to him that day. The difficulty that I face today, because everybody's young involved in this matter, is inadequate. Whatever I do is inadequate to Marco's family. I cannot provide the justice that you seek. I am limited by what the law allows me, and that's all I can do. The rest of your well-being, your mental health, how you keep his memory in your heart is up to you. The law can't do that. Retribution and revenge is a product of pain and anger and only extends the grief. And so it's a process, and this is what the families need to do to heal from this trauma. We'll never be completely healed. It's impossible. I would suggest the goal is those memories in your heart, when they happen, result in happy thoughts and not pain. And until that happens, until those memories can bring you happiness and not pain, you'll continue to struggle. And when you find those memories in your heart, you'll be there where he is now, and he always has been. And so it's the only thing I can offer to the family. This case is extremely tragic in every which way. It affects not only Marco's family, the defendant's family, the defendants themselves, and the community as a whole. This is a perfect example of a symptom that's killing our society, literally. That this a group mentality takes over, where individual logic, good sense is abdicated to the group, whether it's on social media, amongst peers, and then the proliferation of the availability of firearms completely eliminates any thought of any type of action that would be positive in any way whatsoever. It's always negative. And it's too easy today. It's too easy for that group mentality to take over. When a person like this defendant here, who is ostensibly some leader on a sports team, in a good school, with an excellent family, succumbs to whatever group mentality, mob mentality that results in these actions. And it's these actions that have put you here today. And it's difficult when you're young, and all a parent can do is teach as best you can, be vigilant with respect to what their child is doing, and hope they make the right choices, and they don't make a catastrophic choice. So, Mr. Jackson, you need to go back into your experience and decide where did that catastrophic mistake happen. It didn't just happen on December the 11th. You were on that path for a long time. And so I'm left with this duty the law imposes on me, which I will do at this time. So count 3 is murder, life in prison, the possibility of parole after 15 years, 3-year firearm specification must be served prior to and consecutive to that. Count 4 and count 5 merged. No convictions are recorded and no judgments on those counts. Count 6 is improperly discharging a firearm adder into a habitation or school. 3-year firearm specification will be imposed consecutive to the 3-year firearm specification in count 3. I'm finding that it is not a allied offense. There are separate victims, and therefore separate animus can be imputed to this defendant in count 6. I'm opposing that felony of the 2nd degree, 8 years in prison. In count 7, discharge of a firearm at or near prohibited premises, and a 3-year firearm specification, I'm going to find that that does merge count 7, which with count 3, no sentence will be imposed on count 7. Count 10 is tampering with evidence, found in the 3rd degree, 36 months in the Lorraine Correctional Institution. So the imposition of a consecutive sentence is appropriate in this matter. I find specifically that it's necessary to protect the public and to punish this offender. It is not disproportionate to what occurred in this matter. And that the harm is so great or unusual, taking of the life of a 13-year-old child, that a single term does not adequately reflect the seriousness of the conduct. And each bit of this conduct added up to that loss of life. And so count 3 and count 6 and count 10 will be served consecutive to each other. So 2 3-year firearm specifications are 6 years, plus the 8 years in count 6, plus the 3 years in count 10, 32 years. So the first opportunity for parole will be after 32 years. A life sentence is imposed. Jail time credit is also appropriate. 687 days jail time credit. Does that sound correct, Mr. Schlacken?
It does.
Costs are also appropriate in this matter. Community work service may also then be required. I'm ordering restitution amount of $3,125 payable through the probation department to the benefit of Miss Anita Deal. You have a right to appeal your sentences and convictions. If you are indigent and an affidavit is provided, I'll consider appointing an attorney and providing a transcript at state's expense.
Could you assign him appellate counsel, please, Your Honor? He's obviously going to be indigent, considering he's got a 32-year sentence.
Well, it's not exactly obvious, as you're retained, and
I didn't retain for trial, Your Honor. He does not have any funds to retain.
I didn't hear any evidence that he had any funds prior to this happening, but obviously he has resources available to him.
Well, all right, I'll get an affidavit, Your Honor. He has no resources.
Yeah, I appreciate an affidavit
We'll
before I
get it.
make that decision.
Thank you.
All right. Is there anything else from the state?
Your Honor, and if you did and I missed it, I apologize. I do think you have to, even though there is a life sentence, but PRC has to be imposed on the discharge and the tampering.
So felonies of the second degree, mandatory minimum of 18 months up to a maximum of 3 years on those. And the F3 is discretionary up to 2 years at the discretion of the parole authority. Sir, if you're on post-release control or parole, you must follow the rules of the parole authority. If you fail to do that, parole authority has the power to return you to prison to serve out your remaining life sentence. Also, they could impose sanctions up to 9 months or half of the other sentences involved. And if you commit a felony when on parole, a judge can impose a consecutive prison term for a sentence as well. For the time remaining on post-release control or 12 months, whichever is greater. Is there any other matters? There is one other thing. So there's technically the court, there's evidence at least that this crime was committed with a motor vehicle involved in the incident, and the law requires a driver's license suspension, Class 2 driver's license suspension. Any objection to that, Mr. Schlackett?
No.
You agree with that, Mr. Schnatter?
I do, Your Honor. Thank you.
So it's a Class 2 driver's license suspension. I'm going to suspend the driver's license for life. You can apply for privileges if you're released on parole. Is there anything further at this time?
Not on behalf of the state, Your Honor. Thank you.
No, thank you, Your Honor.
All right, defendant's remanded.
Dan DeRose with 19 News. As you see, Dwayne Jackson being taken away, and we're going to listen into court. You see the bailiffs providing a barrier between the Jackson family and the victim's family, Marco Toller. We're just going to keep our eyes here, make sure everything remains orderly and civil, because this is only half of the sentencing. We're only halfway through. We still need to get through the sentencing of Leroy Billups. He was the other 19-year-old that was in the car that came around the corner and shot this 13-year-old, Marco Toller. And the judge handing down a very stiff sentence for the young man who was 19 at the time, depending on birth date. He's probably only 20, 21 now, and he gets life in prison with the first chance of parole at 32 years. More years than he's been alive by a lot for his role in this drive-by shooting in Euclid. Took place back on December 11th of 2021. There were 3 individuals in the car that day. There was Dwayne Jackson, who was just sentenced, Leroy Billups. The 2 of them were 19 at the time. There was also a juvenile in the car. As you see now, the family of Leroy Billups about to get their opportunity to plead their case. Will the judge hand down the same sentence? We will have to see. There could be a differentiation here. The defense for Billups might try to say, and you'll have to forgive me, I didn't sit through the trial. I'm not exactly sure who was accused of being the trigger man, but remember, in the state of Ohio, if you are a part of a group in the commission of a crime, it doesn't matter that you didn't pull the trigger. He was still found guilty of 1 count of murder, 2 counts of felony assault. The same charges were found guilty on both 19-year-olds, then 19. And so therefore, because they were together, but we may hear maybe an argument in court that may point the finger at exactly who pulled the trigger in this drive-by shooting. And was it Billups or was it Jackson? And so should they be given the exact same sentence? We will have to wait and see. More than likely, because the judge has already heard the victim impact statements and how powerful those statements were, especially by his mother saying, "I beg of you to do what's right." She was distraught, thinking about living the rest of her life without her 13-year-old son. She said that everyone in the neighborhood attended his funeral, because he was so well liked. He shoveled sidewalks, driveways, he raked leaves in the neighborhood. Everyone knew who this young man was in that neighborhood, Marco Toller. He was visiting his best friend, was in the front yard. You heard his mother say something to the effect, "What do you mean he wasn't supposed to be there?" We see this a lot in Cleveland. If you don't, quote unquote, have permission to be in someone else's neighborhood, it has turned deadly. Was that the case here? Again, because we didn't sit through the court case, we're not entirely sure, but that's apparently what the mother was leading to, as we see the second defendant, Leroy Billups, being brought into court. But what I was getting at is I'm not assuming that we will hear all of the victim impact statements all over again. Let's take you live into court.
Present in court is Mr. Billups. Is that correct, sir? Yes. Also present, representing Mr. Billups, his attorney, Mr. Joseph Leonardo. Present, representing the State of Ohio Assistant County Prosecutor Jeffrey Schnatter, and present, and Mr. Carson Strang. We are here for sentencing. On a prior date in court, this defendant the jurors convicted this defendant in open court. Verdicts were read. In count 3, murder, a violation of section 2903.02b, an unclassified felony. In count 4, felonious assault, there's also a 1 and a 3-year firearm specification. In count 3, was found guilty. Felonious assault in count 4 and count 5 with 1 and 3-year firearm specifications. Those are felonies of the second degree. Jurors also found in count 6, defendant guilty of improper discharging firearm at or into habitation or school, and also a 1 and 3-year firearm specification. He was found guilty of count 7, discharge of a firearm on or near prohibited premises, and a 1 and 3-year firearm specification, a felony of the first degree. And then count 9, tampering with evidence, a felony of the third degree. Court ordered a pre-sentence investigative report, which I have received and reviewed. Mr. Leonardo, have you had a chance to look at this?
Yes, Your Honor, I have.
Any additions, corrections, or deletions?
Your Honor, just for the attorney, it says my father's name who passed away. It says Angelo F. Leonardo. I would have that changed to Joseph J. Leonardo. And then it does say, you brought this up in the last sentencing, the victim as Jalen Lamar and the victim impact summary sheet. Those are the only 2 errors I saw.
All right. Mr. Schnatter?
I have reviewed it, Your Honor. I agree with Mr. Leonardo on the discrepancies.
All right, so the court will note that alteration that Mr. Joseph J. Leonardo is the attorney who tried the case, and that Marco Toller was the victim as pursuant to the victim summary sheet, which is page 8 of the PSI. All right. Mr. Leonardo, would you like to address the court mitigation?
Thank you very much, Your Honor. Your Honor, nothing I say or we say is going to take back or bring back Marco Toller, so we are sorry for your loss. We are. We do have some family here for my client, Leroy Billups, and I've spoke with them. Charlotte, his mother, is here, Charlotte McLaughlin. Virginia, his grandmother, and other friends and family members. No one is going to speak. It's a lot for them. It's emotional, but we've all took time. I spoke with them, and I'd like to just kind of tell you what they've told me, and that's Charlotte describes her son as very intelligent. He's kind, friendly, and talented. She describes her son as an all-star, and what she means by that, Your Honor, is that as a boy, he was a young football player. They would travel to Florida for different football tournaments. He would win these tournaments, be a part of the all-star teams, win the all-star games. When he became 14 years old, he started attending Euclid schools. He played football for Euclid when he was 14, from the 8th grade all the way to junior year, and he was an all-star. He was a star. He would score numerous touchdowns in each game, and that's all taken away now. Your Honor, the jury convicted my client of crimes that he allegedly committed when he was 17 years old. When you look at his pre-sentence report, he had no criminal history prior to this. No juvenile cases, no traffic cases, it says in the pre-sentence report. I think what says a lot too is he has spent 18 months in the Cuyahoga County Juvenile Detention Center. He's had no new cases. He's actually earned his high school diploma. He's earned a culinary certificate. He shows that he can rehabilitate himself, can better himself, and he's done that. Again, he's not in there fighting, not picking up new cases. He's doing what he can to better himself and to comply with the Juvenile Detention Center's orders. Your Honor, look at the pre-sentence report. Also, you see my client has been diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder. Unfortunately for him, there's been a lot of gun violence in his life. He lost his uncle, who was a big impact in his life, Derek McLaughlin, that's Charlotte's brother. He's lost friends, cousins to gun violence, and it's something that's been a part of his life, unfortunately. And he does suffer from PTSD. Your Honor, I did file an affidavit. My client is indigent. I filed this on November 21st, 2023. Although I was retained, my client has no assets. The family has no further assets. And we would ask that any court costs be waived. We would ask that appellate counsel be appointed for him to appeal the verdicts in this case, which he plans to do. Your Honor, looking at what he was convicted of, we would argue that count 3, 4, 5, the murder, felonious assault, and count 7, discharge of a firearm on or near prohibited premises, would all merge. We do agree that count 6 is not an allied offense because of the separate victims. Your Honor, the minimum amount of time is 21 to life here when you look at the firearm specifications that have to be run consecutive. Your Honor, we are respectfully requesting that Mr. Billups be sentenced to 21 years to life. Again, at the time of these offenses that he was convicted of, he was 17 years old, no criminal history. I know the court sat through this whole trial and saw photos an hour after Mr. Billups' after the death of Marco Toller. In those photos, Mr. Billups doesn't have a firearm. He's not posing as if he has a firearm. Really, he looks like he's in shock. And I believe if that was after the death of Marco Toller, that's what you see in this young man's face, is kind of a look of just really shock about what potentially just happened. So, Your Honor, we would respectfully request all that be taken into consideration today, and we thank you.
All right. Mr. Billups, what would you like to tell the court?
I just want to send my condolences out to his family. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thanks, Your Honor.
Mr. Schneider?
Thank you, Your Honor. I believe his deal would like a separate opportunity to address the court as it
Yes.
relates to Mr. Billups.
Your Honor, I was not going to get back up here, but to just listen to the age and the defense, and I got PTSD. I take a little 300 milligram pill every day. I barely sleep. I haven't been to work since my son, and when I told you December 11th, I can't go to work. My children has PTSD. We take medication to get by. There's no way minimum. No, you were the mastermind. You got his name on you. The mother of the mastermind came to me to let me see the obituary of this person, to let me know who he was. Nah, minimum, my son don't get nothing. All we get to do is look at urns. All we get to do is celebrate my son, put him on a t-shirt, on a mug, on a rug. We don't get my son. As I told you before, my son tell everybody he love him. My son reached out to Jalen Lamar's mother, genuinely showing his love. My son dead behind him because he was innocent going to see his best friend. because if somebody else chose to retaliate about something different. Be mad at the person who made the decision to rad up Zeman and light that house up. And my son was right there, you seen him. You had a chance to stop. You unloaded 7 or 8 shots, you seen that. I had to sit through trial, watching my son in a puddle of blood. A puddle of blood, literally. The first shot you heard the examiners killed my son. He had no fair chance, no winning chance. Yeah, I came to mother, as I told you. I shed tears to a mother. Your son guilty. If my son guilty, I'm going to turn him in. I'm going to turn him in. I already told him. If you did it, you're going to do the time. Don't minimize your time. My son ain't here no more. He ain't never going to be here no more. Ever again. You can hear your son tell you he love you. You can hear your son make a rap. You can hear your son pray. You can see your son make these smirks in this courtroom as he laughed at me and my family. And you seen it, Judge. You seen it all, front and center. We lived through torture for them days in this courtroom. I even got parents looking at me, mean mugging me. Why? Your child guilty. I didn't do this. I had to cremate my son. I had to give my son his dying wishes. PTSD. I'm PTSD. I'm bipolar. I'm DDB, whatever the... Only medication I ain't taking is the Xanax. I'm prescribed 5 pills, but I only take the Wellbutrin. Because I refuse to let a drug be dependent. Only God can get me through this. Now, when I say bare minimum, toss it out the window, Your Honor. My son was 13, being a 13-year-old child, visiting his 13-year-old friend. For whatever reason, you chose to go out there and play man. Be a gangster. Excuse my French, play pussy. Now you gotta get fucked. Cause you did this. My son didn't. He didn't ask not to be here. He didn't ask for us to be here today. And only you can impose that for my child. Now his older sister wants to speak.
How you doing?
Good. Can you state your name, please?
Yes, my name is Kadriana Thompson, CADRIONYA, THOMPSON. I'm his oldest sister. He wasn't just a brother to me. He was like my kid. I raised him. So this fake PTSD, this fake mental issues, this fake trauma because you seen or you had another death in your family from getting shot, that should make you not want to go out and do what you did. I've been here with trial with my older brother, and they pulled the same thing, and I refuse to let it happen this time. Because if you had the trauma of losing somebody to gun violence, you should have never wanted to go out and do the same thing. Regardless if it was meant for my brother or not. That should have never been in your mind at all. You were so much of a good kid, you should have stick to what you knew. Football, not the streets. You want the lesser sentence so you don't have to do that time? No. You decided to make a decision. You executed your plan. And you was okay with it. And you celebrated after. I sat in this courtroom during trial and he smiled in my face. Looked me dead in my face and smiled. Ain't nothing funny. It ain't nothing to smile about. At all. A lesser sentence just won't do. At all. Not at all. When you decided to be a man and make that decision, so be a man and do your time. You held your head up while you was doing what you wanted to do. So hold your head up and take that mugshot. It is what it is. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, I know the court sat through the trial, and you heard my sentencing position for Mr. Jackson. I'm just going to incorporate my comments I made at that sentencing hearing, because the court is the person I'm speaking to about sentences, Mr. Phillips. He can accept his sentence. He doesn't need to hear me speak. The only thing I'm going to add as it relates to him, and I know the court will because it's statutorily mandated to, Mr. Leonardo is correct. He was a juvenile when this crime was committed. You're statutorily mandated to take that into account. I don't know that his age is relevant enough to offset the harm that he caused. I know you'll take it into consideration, and I know you'll impose a proper lawful sentence consistent with the revised code guidance. Thank you, Judge.
Anything else, Mr. Leonardo?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
Mr. Schneider, is the state seeking a joint and several restitution in the same amount that we heard in the prior hearing?
We are, Your Honor. Thank you.
$3,125 for funeral expenses.
Yes, and I did forward those receipts to Mr. Leonardo.
Any objection, Mr. Leonardo?
No, Your Honor.
All right. The court has considered all this information, all the principles and purposes of felony sentencing, all the appropriate recidivism and seriousness factors, and I'll repeat what I said to your cohort, that this is a tragic example of group mentality overtaking common sense, logic, and a sense of well-being for the community. It's too easy today. You were part of a community with the football team. You had a positive outlet for all your activity, and you chose to take that group mentality from a goal of being successful in sports to this goal of seeking retribution and revenge. And it's clear that this was the motive in this case. As I said earlier, retribution and revenge only prolongs the anger and the grief for whatever loss you felt. It doesn't make it any less. It's not a positive way to cope. And nowadays, it's too easy with firearms and this group mentality on social media to completely abdicate any thoughts of what's good for myself, my community, supposedly the people I'm a leader of, your peer group, your football teammates. You had the opportunity with a police officer associated with the football team who was there to support and prop you up for your school, to be a positive influence, to be a true leader. And in fact, you did not do that. You did the opposite of that. You let your community down, you let your team down, you let your family down, and to say nothing of the time you robbed from Marco Toller, the time you robbed from his family. Time is the most precious commodity we have. And their time was limited and always will be. Your time will be taken up with punishment and an opportunity to rehabilitate yourself. And how you spend your time is up to you. Just as it's up to this family who are limited in what kind of time they can spend in absolute abject depression, remorse, grief, anger, all those natural tendencies that need to be coped with. And I pray that Marco's family can find what they need to make those memories happy again and not bring thoughts of pain, anger. Forgiveness is not for the benefit of the actor who caused the pain. Forgiveness is for the benefit of those in the pain. And so you can all forgive yourself too. Forgive Mr. Billups. He'll still hold the retribution of the law, and his family will suffer as well. And as inadequate as the law is, as I explained earlier, my only hope here is that at some point there can be some healing in the community. If nothing else, a deterrence to further going down this road of anger, retribution, group mentality, firearms solving your grief and your problems. Because that will always lead to more grief, more pain, more tragedy. And my sentence will reflect that. I have considered Mr. Billups' age as required by law, and that age will have the benefit of an opportunity for parole statutorily that the DRC must consider after 25 years, regardless of what the sentence is in my case. But I will impose the following sentence. In count 3, murder, life in prison. The eligibility of parole after 15 years. The 3-year firearm specification must be served prior to and consecutive to that 15 years. Counts 4 and 5 in the firearm specifications are allied offenses of count 3. And the discharge of a firearm on or near a prohibited premises in count 7, I'm also going to find merge. And those firearm specifications. So no conviction will be entered on count 4, 5, or count 7. On count 6, I find that it is not an allied offense. Improper discharging a firearm at or into a habitation or school, and the 1 and 3-year firearm specification will be imposed. The 3-year firearm specification will be consecutive to the 3-year firearm specification in count 3. I'm imposing on count 6, 8 years in the Lorraine Correctional Institution as well. In count 9, tampering with evidence. It's a felony of the 3rd degree. 3 years in Lorraine Correctional Institution as well. That tampering with evidence was a clear indication of a lack of remorse or responsibility for what occurred. And I've taken that into consideration. And therefore, also, consecutive sentences are appropriate in this matter, despite the statute, in addition to the 3-year mandatory consecutive nature of the 3-year firearm specifications. I am going to impose consecutive sentences, finding that it is necessary to protect our public and punish this offender. It's not disproportionate to what occurred in this case, the ending of the time the family has with the 13-year-old child, family member. All the positive things that 13-year-old would have done in our community, lost. Also, specifically finding the harm is so great or unusual, a single term does not adequately reflect the seriousness of the conduct. So that is a total of 32 years before the possibility of parole. As I said, statutorily, you will be eligible for the parole to consider release by the statute 2967.132 after 25 years of incarceration. Post-release control is part of the sentences on the felony of the 2nd degree and felony of the 3rd degree. Those are mandatory minimum of 18 months up to a maximum of 3 years. The F3 is discretionary up to 2 years. If you commit a crime on parole or post-release control, you can be returned to the prison up to 9 months, and you could have a consecutive prison term imposed for the time remaining on post-release control or 12 months, whichever is greater. And you're facing life if you are eventually paroled and you violate your parole, you will serve your life sentence. Also, pursuant to the information provided from Ms. Deal, I'm ordering $3,125 restitution that you're jointly and severally responsible for with your co-defendant, imposing also, as required by law, a Class 2 driver's license suspension since this crime occurred with the involvement of a motor vehicle. And I'm imposing a Class 2 suspension for life. You can apply for driving privileges if you're ever paroled. Also, you are required to pay your court costs, if for community work service may also be required. I'll grant your jail time credit. Document indicates 499 days, including juvenile court detention home. Is that correct, Mr. Leonardo?
That's correct, Your Honor.
499 days, jail time credit. You have the right to appeal your sentences and convictions. If you're indigent, I can appoint an attorney and provide a transcript at state's expense. I have received the affidavit of yourself with respect to your indigency. At this point, I will appoint the public defender's office to represent you in an appeal and provide a transcript at state's expense. Is there anything else?
The only thing I think it's important to make a record of, Your Honor, there were the hung count in this trial, as well as the hung jury on the firearm specification. We've discussed that with our supervisor. At this juncture, we do not intend to move forward on prosecuting those counts. However, should something happen on appeal where the existing convictions are disturbed, we would always preserve the right to move forward on those counts if there was ever a new trial order.
You asking them to be dismissed without prejudice at this time?
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Leonardo?
No objection, Your Honor.
All right, so we'll note that it's counts 2 with 1 3-year and 5-year firearm specifications. Count 2 with the 1, 3, and 5-year firearm specifications. And the 5-year firearm specifications, can they be retried with respect to the other offenses that were convicted of?
If anything were to be disturbed on appeal on those other offenses, I believe the state's position is they could be retried on even the offenses where we've sustained a conviction. Of course, the offenses that were not guilty, we could never move forward on those.
So count 6, count 7, believe, and count 4 and count 5. The 5-year firearm specifications are dismissed without prejudice, and the state notes and reserves the right to re-indict those pending any disturbance of the verdicts as with respect to this defendant only.
I would make that same motion as it relates to Mr. Jackson. Of course, I should have done that when Mr. Schlack was in the courtroom, but I will certainly, perhaps we'll do that by motion, and Mr. Schlack will have an opportunity to respond.
I'm gonna suggest that you do file a motion with respect to Mr. Jackson on that issue. Is there anything else that a defendant should be advised of, or should make a ruling at this point?
Not on behalf of the state, Your Honor. Thank you.
Mr. Leonardo?
Yes, Judge. Judge, respectfully, I would request that the court cost be waived. My client is indigent. I filed an affidavit on November 21st, 2023. At the time of these allegations, he was 17. Then he spent 18 months in the juvenile detention center. He has not worked. He has no assets. His family has no assets. So I would respectfully request the court cost be waived.
All right. Well, first of all, the court notes that Mr. Leonardo was retained, and that I heard no evidence that Mr. Billups himself personally had any assets prior to this case. and so his position has not changed. Apparently, he's had enough support to retain an attorney, and certainly there was support evident here in the courtroom as well, which would indicate that there is potential for financial support for Mr. Billups during his incarceration. Also, I'll note that with the imposition of costs and the restitution, that community work service may be available to, frankly, advance Mr. Billups' skills, giving him things to do while he's incarcerated, and that's a positive way for him to be responsible for his court costs. So I'm going to find that the court costs are appropriately imposed. I'm not imposing any fine. I mentioned the driver's license suspension, didn't I?
Yes, Your Honor.
Anything else, Mr. Leonardo?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
All right, defendant's remanded.
All rise.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Dan DeRose with 19 News here as you hear Billups say some final words. Again, we're going to watch just to make sure that the two families are peaceful on their way out. We did see one family member of Billups have to be escorted out, while the mother of Marco Toller, he is the 13-year-old that was killed in the drive-by. While she was speaking, one of Mr. Billups' family members had to be escorted out. Again, they're going to wait for, as we see a hug from the mother of Marco Toller to the prosecution team, as they get really the judge to agree.